My father shrugged and called it just a reunion, warning me not to make it a scene. Yet that event was built with hundreds of hours of my unpaid work and charged to my accounts. All while my name was missing from the guest list. They assumed I would swallow the insult like I always did. Instead, I left the state, and the ugly truth followed them into that ballroom like a lit match. My name is Gianna Simmons, and at 2 a.m, the only light in my apartment came from the dual monitors humming on my desk. My eyes felt like they were packed with hot sand. But I could not stop. I was obsessing over the kerning on a font that looked elegant enough to scream old money, but legible enough for my great-aunt's failing cataracts. On the screen, the banner read, Simmons Family Legacy, a weekend of roots and wings. It was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation, designed to make a fractured, competitive family look like a cohesive dynasty. I had spent the last 3 weeks editing the slideshow. I had color-corrected 40 years of bad lighting. I had digitally removed red eye from my cousins and smoothed out the wrinkles on my father's forehead in the portraits from the 90s. I had built the menus, designed the welcome packets, and coordinated the color palette to match the coastal aesthetic of the venue. I did all of this because I was the daughter who fixed things. I was the one who made the Simmons family look good on paper, even when the reality was falling apart. My phone vibrated against the hardwood of the desk, the sound harsh in the quiet room. I rubbed my temples and reached for it, expecting a thank you or perhaps a request to change the font color one last time. It was a text message from my father. Randall Simmons. The preview showed 3 short sentences. I unlocked the phone, and the words sat there, glowing white against the dark background. Guest list tight. It is just a reunion. Don't take it personally. I read it once, then I read it again. My brain refused to process the syntax. It was a reunion, a family reunion. The event I had just spent 100 hours building from the ground up. The event where my laptop currently held the master files for every single piece of printed material. Guest list tight. The air in my lungs felt suddenly too thin. I set the phone down carefully, as if it were a bomb, and stared at the slideshow on my screen. There was a photo of me and my brother, Wesley, from 10 years ago. We were smiling on a boat. I had just spent 20 minutes fixing the exposure on that photo, so we both looked happy. I picked up the phone and dialed my father. He answered on the second ring, his voice clipped and impatient. He did not say hello. I told you not to make this a thing. Gianna? You are telling me I am not invited, I said. My voice sounded strange, hollow, like it was coming from someone standing behind me. I designed the invitations. Dad, I built the website. I am literally exporting the final tribute video right now. It is a small venue, he said, and I could hear the lie in the friction of his voice. We had to make cuts. It is mostly for the elders and the business partners. You know how it is. Business partners? I asked. It is a family reunion. It is networking. Gianna, you do not enjoy these things anyway. You always sit in the corner and look critical. He sighed, a long, heavy exhale that was meant to make me feel like a burden. Look, you have been working hard. You sound tired. Just stay home and rest. Treat yourself to a spa day or something. I do not want a spa day, I said, gripping the phone tight enough to turn my knuckles white. I want to be there. I am your daughter. You are being dramatic, he snapped. Gia, listen to me. Do not ruin this for everyone else. Gia. The name hit me harder than the rejection. He never called me Gianna when he wanted something, or when he was managing me. Gianna was an adult woman with a design firm and boundaries. Gia was the little girl with scraped knees who just wanted her daddy to be proud of her. Gia was obedient. Gia did not ask questions. Gia accepted scraps and called it a meal. He used that nickname like a leash, a quick tug to remind me of my place in the hierarchy. I am not being dramatic, I said, but the fight was already leaking out of me, replaced by a cold, creeping numbness. I have to go, he said. Wesley is asking about the AV setup. Just email the final files to him. Okay, be a good girl. The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of my apartment. The hum of the computer fan sounding like a jet engine. Be a good girl. Send the files. Disappear. My hand shook as I reached for the mouse. I minimized the design software and opened my email client. I needed to see it. I needed to understand the mechanics of how I had been erased from my own life. I clicked on the folder labeled Vendor Contracts. There was the invoice for the venue, a deposit of $5,000, paid 6 months ago. The card on file ended in 4022, my card. I clicked on the catering contract. Client Gianna Simmons. I clicked on the florist, the lighting rental, the custom linen service. Every single one of them had my name on the signature line. My father had told me he was bad with technology and that he did not understand the secure signing portals. He had asked me to handle the logistics, promising to write me a check when the estate dividends cleared in the next quarter. Just put it on your card for now. Gia, you know I'm good for it. I had believed him. I had fronted nearly $12,000 in deposits and rushing fees because I thought we were a team. I thought I was investing in a memory we would all share. Then I saw a new notification in my inbox. It was an automated alert from the cloud drive I managed for the family. Wesley Simmons has shared a folder with you, reunion_final_guests. I clicked the link. The permission settings stared back at me in gray text view only. I was the administrator of the entire family archive. Yet for this specific folder, I had been demoted to a spectator. I opened the spreadsheet. My eyes scanned the rows. There were not 20 people. There were not 30. There were 182 confirmed guests. I saw names of distant cousins I had not seen since I was 12. I saw my father's golf buddies. I saw potential investors for Wesley's failing startup. I saw neighbors who had lived next to us for 6 months. I scrolled down to the S section. Simmons, Randall, Simmons, Wesley, Simmons, Kendra. There was no Simmons. Gianna. I checked the T section, thinking maybe they had listed me under my middle name. Nothing. I checked the V section for vendors. Nothing. I was not even listed as the help. I was simply gone. I sat back in my ergonomic chair, the leather creaking beneath me. A distinct physical pain radiated from my chest. A tightness that made it hard to swallow. They did not just forget to invite me. This was architectural. This was a demolition. They had extracted my labor, my money, and my talent, and then they had constructed a wall to keep me out. They knew I would not cause a scene. They counted on it. They banked on the fact that Gia would never let the family look bad. They knew I would send the files because I was desperate to be useful, and being useful was the only currency I had ever been allowed to trade for love. A soft chime sounded from my phone. It was an automated notification from the event management app I had installed to coordinate the check-in process. Congratulations, Gianna. Your event, Simmons Family Legacy, is live this weekend. Get ready to make memories. I looked at the cheerful confetti animation exploding on my phone screen. The mockery was absolute. My event was live. My money was spent. My designs were printed, but I was not going to be there. I stared at the screen until the backlight dimmed and turned off, leaving me in the darkness, with only the blue glow of the monitor illuminating the tears I refused to let fall. They wanted me to stay home. They wanted me to be quiet. For the first time in my life, I wondered what would happen if I stopped being Gia, the good girl, and started acting like the person who owned the contracts. I needed a second source. I needed to triangulate the lie before I could fully believe the coordinates. My finger hovered over Paige Hollis's name in my contact list. Paige was my cousin on my mother's side, the kind of person who posted every latte she drank and used too many exclamation points. But she was incapable of malice. If there was a narrative being spun about me, Paige would not be the author of it, but she would certainly be the audience. I typed out a message, keeping my tone breezy, burying the panic under a layer of casual professional curiosity. Hey Paige, just double-checking the start time for the welcome dinner on Friday. My invite seems to be glitching. Do you have the PDF? The 3 bubbles appeared immediately. I stared at them. my breath held in the back of my throat. "Oh, Uncle Randall said you were swamped with a big merger this week and decided to skip it to focus on work. I thought that sounded so stressful. Sad you aren't coming." The air in the room felt stagnant. A merger. I did not have a merger. I ran a boutique design firm, and my biggest project for the last month had been this very reunion. My father had invented a corporate crisis to explain my absence so he would not have to explain his exclusion. Here is the invite, though. Just in case you change your mind, it is going to be huge. A second later, a forwarded email landed in my inbox. I clicked it open, and the screen filled with the high-resolution graphics I had designed. The header was the gold leaf crest I had vectorized by hand. The font was the custom serif I had purchased specifically for this project, but the text overlaid on my work was new. I zoomed in on the details. The Simmons family legacy weekend at Hilton Harbor. I felt a cold flush crawl up my neck. Hilton Harbor. My father had looked me in the eye and told me they were booking a small community hall near the old homestead to keep costs down. Hilton Harbor was a 5-star coastal resort 2 states away. It was the kind of place that charged $12 for a bottle of water and required a resort pass just to walk on the beach. I scrolled down to the itinerary. This was not a casual get-together. This was a gala. Friday, welcome cocktail hour on the dune deck. Saturday, the legacy banquet and golf tournament. Sunday, farewell brunch. I kept scrolling, my eyes hunting for the guest list link Paige had mentioned. It was embedded at the bottom. I clicked it, and a spreadsheet opened up. It was the same list I had been locked out of, but now I was viewing it through the forwarded access of a guest. 182 names. I saw the names of the board members from my father's company. I saw the mayor of his town. I saw people I had never met, friends of Wesley, business associates, neighbors. There were distant relatives from the Oregon branch of the family whom I had not seen in 20 years. Every single one of them had a checkmark next to their name under RSVP, confirmed. My eyes darted to the section labeled Event Hosts. It was printed in bold, capital letters at the bottom of the digital invitation. Hosted by Randall Simmons and Wesley Simmons. My name had been scrubbed clean. I was the ghost in the machine. I had built the engine, polished the chrome, and filled the tank, but the keys had been handed to my brother, who had never organized anything more complex than a fraternity keg party. Then I saw it, the item on the Saturday schedule that made my stomach turn over. 7 p.m., a special tribute presentation, a journey through our history, curated by the Simmons men, the slideshow, the 40 hours of restoration work, the meticulous scanning of fragile negatives, the color correction, the narrative pacing I had agonized over to ensure my late mother was represented with dignity, curated by the Simmons men. My phone rang. The screen lit up with my father's face. He must have heard from Paige. I answered, not saying a word. "What did Paige tell you?" His voice was tight, low, the tone he used when a waitress got his order wrong. "I thought we discussed this, Gianna. I told you not to make a scene. I am not making a scene. Dad," I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. "I am reading an invitation to a legacy weekend at Hilton Harbor, an event hosted by you and Wesley, an event featuring a slideshow that I made. We upgraded the venue last minute," he lied. The lie was so lazy it was insulting. You do not book Hilton Harbor last minute. You book it 18 months in advance. And Wesley stepped up to help with the hosting duties since you are so busy with your work. "I am not busy," I said. "You told Paige I was handling a merger. You lied to the family to explain why I am not there." "I was protecting your reputation," he snapped. "Better they think you are a workaholic than think you are unwanted." The word hung in the silence between us. Unwanted. "Why?" I asked. "I did the work. I paid the deposits. Why am I unwanted?" He sighed, a sound of profound irritation. "Look, Gianna, you know how you get. You are intense. You obsess over details. You correct people. Honestly, you bring down the vibe. I bring down the vibe. We just want a happy, easy weekend," he said, We want to celebrate the family success. When you are around, you are always watching. You make people feel judged. You make Wesley nervous. We just wanted one weekend where we didn't have to walk on eggshells around your moods. I stood up from my desk. My legs felt numb. It was not an oversight. It was a curation. They were building a brand, the Simmons family brand, and that brand was easy, successful, male, and unbothered. I was the woman who remembered the dates. I was the woman who managed the logistics. I was the woman who knew where the bodies were buried because I was the one who dug the graves and paid the funeral costs. My competence was useful, but my presence was an indictment. I was the reality check they did not want to cash. So you are using my work, I said. You are using the slideshow. You are using the banners. We paid for the printing, he said dismissively. The files belong to the family. Don't be petty. The invoices are in my name. Dad, the venue deposit is on my card. I will write you a check next week, he shouted. My God, it always comes down to money with you. This is why you were not invited. You are transactional. Family is about heart. Gianna, learn the difference. He hung up. I stood in the center of my living room, the phone hot against my ear. Transactional. He called me transactional while he was hosting a party on my credit line. I looked back at the computer screen. The invite was still open. The smiling faces of my father and brother beamed out from the header photo, a photo I had taken of them last Thanksgiving. I had edited out the stain on Wesley's shirt. I had brightened my father's eyes. I had created the very image of perfection that they were now using to exclude me. My phone pinged again, a text message. It was from Wesley. Heard you talk to Paige. Seriously. Do not show up. It will be awkward for everyone. Just let us have this one. Dad is really stressed. He followed it with a single emoji, a laughing face with tears. He was laughing. He thought my exclusion was a funny little hiccup in his big weekend. He thought my feelings were a nuisance to be managed via text message. They thought I would stay home. They thought I would sit in my apartment, cry into a pillow, and wait for the check that would never come. They thought I would protect their secret because being the good daughter was the only identity I had ever been allowed to have. I looked at the laughing emoji, and then I looked at the folder of unpaid invoices on my desk. Awkward, I whispered to the empty room. If they thought my presence would be awkward, they had no idea what my absence was about to cost them. I had a bookmark on my browser that I had not opened in 3 years. It was hidden inside a folder labeled Reference Materials, buried beneath color palettes and typography cheat sheets. It was my escape hatch, a place I visited only when the noise of my life became too loud to bear. I clicked it. The website for the Red Earth Sanctuary in Sedona loaded with a soothing fade-in effect. I stared at the images of red rocks, private casitas, and women sitting in meditation circles wrapped in linen for the last 36 months. Every time I had enough money to book a stay, something had come up. Wesley needed bail money for a DUI. He swore was a misunderstanding. My father needed a loan to cover payroll because a client was late. The roof at the family lake house needed repairing. My savings account was a community chest, and I was the only one making deposits. But not tonight. I looked at the dates. They had a last-minute opening for a breath and trail retreat starting tomorrow morning. It was the premium package, private villa, guided dawn hikes, no Wi-Fi in the common areas. The price was astronomical, $4,500 for 5 days. I did not flinch. That was less than the deposit I had just lost on the catering for a party I was banned from attending. I pulled out my credit card. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a strange, electric adrenaline. I typed in the numbers. I selected the add-on massage package. I selected the airport transfer. I selected the option for strict privacy. I hit confirm. Thank you, Gianna. You are booked. It took 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, I had done more for my own mental health than I had done in a decade of therapy. I was not doing this to post photos. I was not doing this to make them jealous. I was doing this because if I stayed in my apartment for one more day, staring at the unpaid invoices and the Simmons family legacy banner files. I was going to shatter. I packed a bag. I threw in hiking boots, leggings, and 3 books I'd been meaning to read since Christmas. I did not pack a laptop. I did not pack the hard drive with the reunion files. Before I called the Uber to the airport, I opened my Instagram. I usually only posted finished design work or safe, curated photos of my garden. Today, I typed a single sentence against a stark black background. When you are not on the list, you stop auditioning. I posted it to my story. I did not tag my father. I did not tag Wesley. I did not hide it from them either. I zipped my suitcase and walked out the door. By the time I was in the back of the car watching the city lights blur past, my phone had started to buzz. It began with a text from my father, then a call from Wesley, then a call from my Aunt Linda, then a number I did not recognize, probably a cousin trying to figure out why there was tension in the family group chat. The phone vibrated against my thigh like an angry hornet. My instinct was to answer. That reflex was deep in my wiring. I was the fixer. If the phone rang, it meant there was a fire, and I was the only one with a bucket. My thumb hovered over the screen as Wesley's name flashed for the 3rd time. I imagined him panic-stricken. He was probably realizing he did not have the login for the guest management software, or that he did not know where the printed menus were stored. I took a breath, turned the ringer off, and dropped the phone into the side pocket of my purse. I did not block them. That would have been engagement. I just let them ring into the void. It was a new skill. This non-performance. It felt heavy and uncomfortable, like wearing shoes on the wrong feet, but I forced myself to sit with it. At the airport, I breezed through security. I had TSA pre-check. Another thing I had paid for myself while my father complained that the lines were too long but refused to fill out the paperwork. I sat at the gate, watching the planes taxi on the tarmac. I decided to check my email one last time, just to ensure my flight confirmation was accessible. At the top of my inbox was an automated message marked Urgent. It was from the event coordination platform. Action required final invoice approval for Hilton Harbor Catering. The email was standard. The final headcount had been locked in. The food order was prepped. The total remaining balance was $8,000. Due 48 hours before the event, there was a big green button that said, Approve Payment. Below it was a smaller link that said, Manage Payment Sources. The card on file was mine. If I clicked that green button, the money would leave my account. The shrimp cocktails would be served, and my father would toast to his success while I sat in Arizona. If I did nothing, the system would attempt to auto-charge the card at midnight. I felt a surge of old guilt. I could hear my father's voice in my head, telling me I was petty, that I was ruining everything, that money was just paper and family was forever. I could feel the weight of the embarrassment they would face if the catering staff refused to serve appetizers because the bill was flagged. But then I remembered the text. Don't show up. It will be awkward. They had fired me. They had fired me from the position of daughter, sister, and guest. When you fire an employee, you lose access to their corporate card. That is how business works. I moved my cursor over the link. I did not cancel the event. I did not write a nasty email to the vendor telling them to sue my father. I simply logged into the payment portal and removed my credit card from the file. I left the field blank. I closed the browser tab. I was not sabotaging them. I was simply resigning. If they were the hosts, as the invitation so boldly claimed, then surely Randall and Wesley Simmons had a credit card between them to cover the party they were throwing. I boarded the plane and found my seat in row 3. A flight attendant handed me a sparkling water with a lime wedge. I took a sip, the bubbles sharp on my tongue. As the plane began its ascent, lifting above the cloud layer, the guilt tried to claw its way back up my throat. I worried about the logistics. Who would check the sound system? Who would make sure Aunt Marge didn't sit next to her ex-husband? Who would tip the valet? Then, a strange question floated into my mind, silencing the noise. If I disappear for a week, do they even know what to do? I realized with a jolt that I did not know the answer. I had never given them the chance to fail. I had been so busy catching the balls they dropped that I never stopped to see if they could actually catch one themselves. Maybe they would figure it out. Maybe they would step up. Or maybe, just maybe, the entire infrastructure of the Simmons family was built on the back of one exhausted woman. And without her, the roof would cave in. I leaned my head back against the seat. The cabin was dark. When I landed in Phoenix, I took a shuttle north. The landscape changed from urban sprawl to high desert, the saguaros standing like sentinels in the moonlight. By the time we reached Sedona, the red rocks were looming shadows against a star-filled sky. I checked into my casita. The room smelled of sage and cedar. There was a deep soaking tub and a bed that looked like a cloud. I walked into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked wrecked. There were dark circles under my eyes that concealer could no longer hide. My skin looked gray. I saw a woman who was 35 years old, but carried the exhaustion of a 60-year-old matriarch. I saw a woman who had been running a marathon for people who would not even drive her to the starting line. I washed my face, scrubbing off the city grit. I walked back into the bedroom. My phone was on the nightstand. I picked it up. 42 missed calls. 38 text messages. Pick up the phone. Gianna. Where are you? The vendor is saying the card was removed. Fix this. Don't be a brat. We are family. I did not read them all. I did not reply. I swiped down and tapped the moon icon. Do not disturb. Then, I powered the phone off completely. I placed it face down on the wood. I climbed into the bed. The sheets cool and crisp against my skin. For the first time in 10 years, I was not going to sleep with the phone under my pillow. I was not going to wake up at 3 a.m. to soothe my father's ego or fix my brother's mistakes. I closed my eyes. The silence in the desert was absolute. It was terrifying. It was magnificent. Let them host. Let them figure it out. I was on vacation. I was sitting on the terracotta patio of my casita, watching the sun dip behind the red rocks of Sedona. The air smelled of juniper and dust, a stark contrast to the humid, salty air of Hilton Harbor. I had a book open on my lap, but I was not reading. I was waiting. My phone, which I had turned back on just to check the time, lit up with a FaceTime request from Paige. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to throw the device into the cactus garden and never look back. But a darker, colder part of me, the part that had been sharpened by years of being the family doormat, wanted to see. I wanted to see what a Simmons family event looked like when the engine was removed from the car. I accepted the call. Paige's face filled the screen. She was hiding in what looked like a supply closet or a very narrow hallway. The lighting was bad, casting long shadows over her frantic expression. In the background, I could hear the muffled thump of the jazz band and the clinking of high-end glassware. Gianna, she whispered, her eyes wide. It is a disaster. You have to tell me how to fix the check-in scanners. I cannot fix them. Paige, I said, my voice calm. I am in Arizona. The QR codes are not syncing, she hissed, panning the camera around to show me a glimpse of the lobby through a crack in the door. It was chaos. A line of guests, probably 40 people deep, was snaking out the door. The hostess stand was unmanned because the 2 hired coordinators were huddled over a tablet that was flashing a red error message. My father was standing next to them, wiping sweat from his forehead with a monogrammed handkerchief. He looked less like a host and more like a man trying to defuse a bomb with a spoon. They keep scanning the codes, but the system says, Invalid Event ID. Paige narrated, flipping the camera back to herself. Uncle Randall keeps telling the staff to just override it, but they can't because the system requires a master admin password to bypass the security check. The password is in the binder I made, I said. The one I gave to Wesley. Wesley lost the binder, Paige said. I took a sip of my herbal tea. Of course he did. The staff asked him for the backup login, Paige continued. And I heard your dad say, I don't know, Gianna usually handles the tech stuff. He sounded so mad. Gianna, like it was your fault he didn't know the password to his own party. Let me guess, I said. They are manually checking names off a printed list. They don't have a printed list, Paige said. The printer at the hotel was down, and Wesley said he didn't need one because the app was foolproof. I watched the tiny screen as my father forced a smile at a couple I recognized as the owners of the largest real estate firm in the county. He was shaking hands, but his eyes were darting around the room, looking for someone to blame. "What about the slideshow?" I asked. I knew the answer, but I wanted to hear it. Paige grimaced. "Okay, so about that. Wesley has been trying to get the tribute presentation to load for 30 minutes. He has the file on the laptop, but every time he clicks it, a box pops up asking for creator permissions. I locked the editing rights before I left," I said. "It is view only. They can play it, but they have to be logged into the authorized account to present it on the main projector system. That is a security feature." Well, he is freaking out. He is currently trying to stream it from his phone to the big screen via Bluetooth, but the connection keeps dropping. It looks terrible. The music is lagging, and half the photos are pixelated. I felt a twinge of satisfaction that was so potent, it almost tasted sweet. "They wanted to curate the history," I said. "They should have learned how to use the projector." Paige moved to a quieter spot. Stepping out onto a balcony, the noise of the party faded slightly. "It gets worse," she said. "Mr. Henderson is here." Mr. Henderson was my father's most important investor. He was the man whose approval my father craved more than oxygen. "I was standing right next to them near the bar," Paige said. "Mr. Henderson picked up one of the welcome packets, the ones with the gold foil stamping you stayed up for 3 nights to finish. He told your dad, 'Randall, this branding is exquisite. Who is your agency? This looks like Manhattan-level work.'" My grip on the phone tightened. "What did he say?" "He laughed," Paige said, shaking her head. "He did that fake, humble laugh. He said, 'Oh, we have a great internal team. I like to keep a close eye on the aesthetics myself.' He didn't even mention your name, Gianna. He took credit for the font choice." I closed my eyes. I had hand-selected that font. I had argued with the printer for 2 hours to get the gold foil to sit correctly on the cardstock. "But wait," Paige said, her voice dropping lower. "Kendra was standing there." Kendra, Wesley's girlfriend. She heard the whole thing. She looked at the program. Then she looked at your dad. And she asked, "Wait, isn't this Gianna's design style? Where is she? Anyway." And your dad got super flustered. He waved his hand like he was swatting a fly and said, "Gianna is tied up with a crisis at work. She could not make it." Then he pivoted and tried to order Henderson a scotch. "So they are sticking to the lie," I said. "They are doing more than sticking to it," Paige said. "They are broadcasting it. During the toast, your dad got up on the stage. The microphone gave feedback for like 10 seconds. It was excruciating, and then he gave this speech about how family is the anchor in the storm. He talked about loyalty. He talked about showing up for the ones you love. The irony was thick enough to choke on. "People are talking. Gianna," Paige said softly. "I hear them at the tables. They are saying it is weird that you are not here. They are saying you must be incredibly selfish to prioritize work over a legacy weekend. One of your aunts told my mom that you have become too big for your britches and that you probably think you are too good for the family now. They are letting people believe I abandoned them," I said. "To cover up the fact that they excluded me." "Exactly, it is gross." Suddenly, the camera on Paige's end jerked. She turned around. "Oh God, something is happening at the bar." "What?" "The bar manager just pulled your dad aside. He looks serious. He is holding one of those mobile payment terminals." I sat up straighter. "The authorization." "I can't hear them," Paige whispered, creeping closer to the door. "But your dad is turning red. He is pointing at the machine. Now Wesley is running over." I knew exactly what was happening. The venue required a final authorization swipe on the card on file before opening the premium liquor service for the reception. My father was likely trying to wave them off, telling them to just charge the account. not realizing the account was no longer linked to a valid card. Paige gasped. "What?" I demanded. "Kendra followed Wesley," Paige said. "She is standing right behind them. She just stepped out to take a call, but now she is back. She looks sick. Gianna." "Why?" "She is looking at the payment terminal. Your dad is yelling at the waiter now. He is saying, 'Try it again. There is plenty of limit on that card.'" My heart hammered against my ribs. He was trying to force the charge. He was trying to spend my money, in real time, at a party where I was persona non grata. "Kendra just grabbed Wesley's arm," Paige said, her voice shaking. "She is asking him something. Oh, wow. She just pulled away from him." "Paige, what is she saying?" "I think she figured it out," Paige said. "She just looked at the receipt the manager is holding. It has the last 4 digits of the card on it, 4022. My card. Everyone in the family knew my card number because they had all borrowed it at some point for emergencies." Paige turned the camera back to her face. She looked pale. "Gianna," she said, "Kendra just walked up to me. She looks like she saw a ghost." "Put her on," I said. "She went back outside," Paige said. "But before she left, she looked at me and asked if I was talking to you." I nodded. "She told me to tell you something." "What?" "She said she heard the manager tell your dad the card was declined because the username didn't match the authorization. And then she heard your dad tell Wesley to just use Gianna's other card number, the one we have written down in the office." I felt the blood drain from my face. They weren't just using the card on file. They had a list. They were keeping a record of my financial information to use as a backup generator for their lifestyle. "And then," Paige whispered, "Kendra looked at Wesley and said, 'Wes, your dad just tried to put a charge through on Gianna's card after you told me she wasn't invited.'" I stared at the frozen image of the party chaos behind Paige. The music was still playing a cheerful, upbeat jazz number that felt grotesque against the reality of what was happening. "She knows," I said. "Yeah," Paige said, "and she just walked out the front door. I don't think she's coming back for the cake." I sat in the corner of a small coffee shop in Sedona, watching the dust motes dance in a shaft of sunlight that cut through the window. The air here was dry and smelled of sage and roasted beans, a sharp contrast to the humid, suffocating atmosphere of the coastal resort I was supposed to be at. My phone lay on the table. Face up this time. I was not afraid of it anymore. I was studying it, like a biologist examining a specimen under glass. The frantic energy of the last 24 hours had receded, leaving behind a cold, clear silence. In that silence, memories began to surface, not the warm, fuzzy nostalgia my father was currently selling to a room full of people, but the sharp, jagged pieces of reality I had spent years trying to swallow. I remembered a Tuesday afternoon 3 years ago. My father had called me into his home office, the one with the mahogany desk that faced the wall so no one could see his screen. He had been charming, pouring me a glass of iced tea, asking about my design business. Then, the pivot. "Gia, I need a small favor," he had said, sliding a contract across the polished wood. "I am switching internet providers for the main office, but there is a mix-up with the business credit rating, just a clerical error. You know how these banks are. Can you sign as the guarantor? Just for a few months until I clear it up?" I had hesitated. I remembered the knot in my stomach. But then he had looked at me with those sad, expectant eyes, the eyes of a man carrying the weight of the world, and I had signed. I never saw the bill, but I remembered getting a late notice 6 months later that I had quietly paid because I did not want to stress him out. I took a sip of my black coffee. The bitterness was grounding. Then I thought of Wesley, 2 years ago. He had called me at midnight, sobbing. He told me he was $3,000 short on his tuition for the semester, and that if he did not pay by morning, he would be dropped from his classes. He said he was terrified to tell Dad. I had transferred the money from my savings account money I had been setting aside for a new laptop. I told him he did not have to pay me back right away. 3 weeks later, Wesley posted a photo on social media. He was wearing a new limited edition designer watch. When I asked him about it, He told me it was a gift from a friend. I had chosen to believe him because the alternative was admitting that my brother had stolen my labor to accessorize his ego. I picked up my phone and opened my banking application. I logged in with my fingerprint. The interface loaded, displaying my current balance and recent activity. There, at the very top of the list, was a notification in bright red text. Transaction declined, Hilton Harbor Resort. Amount $8,450. Reason, user canceled authorization. The timestamp was 45 minutes ago. They had tried it. Even after realizing I was not there, even after removing my name from the guest list, even after erasing my credit from the slideshow, they had still tried to force the payment through. They truly believed that my purpose on this earth was to be an infinite resource, a tap that flowed with money and solutions whenever they turned the handle. I stared at the number. $8,000. That was not a mistake. That was not a misunderstanding. That was theft attempted with a smile. For years, I had told myself that my father was just bad with money, that he was a visionary who needed help with the details. I had told myself that I was the practical one, the pillar that held up the family roof. I was wrong. I was not the pillar. I was the foundation they were stomping on. My father did not want a partner. He wanted a silent backer. He wanted to stand on a stage and accept applause for a lifestyle he could not afford, paid for by a daughter he did not respect. The reunion was not a celebration of our legacy. It was a costume party, and he was dressed as a successful patriarch. A text message banner slid down the top of my screen. It was from Paige again. He is losing it. Gianna, he just told Aunt Linda that you abandoned the family in our time of need. He is shouting. People are leaving. I read the words, abandoned us, and waited for the familiar crush of guilt. I waited for the panic, the urge to call and apologize, to fix it, to transfer the money just to make the shouting stop. It did not come. Instead, I felt a strange lightness in my chest. It was as if I had been hiking up a mountain carrying a backpack full of rocks, and someone had just reached over and cut the straps. The pack had fallen away, and for the first time, I could stand up straight. You look like you just solved a difficult math equation. I looked up. Rowan, a woman I had met in the yoga session earlier that morning, was standing by my table. She was holding a green juice and wearing a loose linen shirt. She had the kind of calm face that made you want to tell her your secrets. Something like that, I said, putting my phone down. My family is having a bit of a meltdown. They are angry that I am not there to pay for the party they didn't invite me to. Rowan pulled out the chair opposite me and sat down. She did not look shocked. She did not offer empty platitudes. She just looked at me with a steady, piercing gaze. I heard you on the phone earlier, she said softly. You were apologizing to the air. You kept saying, I should have. You have the posture of someone who is used to carrying things that do not belong to her. They are saying I abandoned them, I said, my voice steady. My father is telling everyone I left them high and dry. Rowan took a sip of her juice. Gianna, listen to me. They are not mad that you left. They are mad that you stopped being useful. There is a difference between being loved and being used. When a tool stops working, you get frustrated. When a person leaves, you get sad. Does your father sound sad? I thought about the red text on my banking app. I thought about the lie regarding the merger. I thought about the Gia nickname he used to keep me small. No, I said. He sounds inconveniently broke. Rowan smiled, a small, sad expression. Then you have your answer. You did not abandon them. You just resigned from a job you never applied for. She was right. I had been an employee in my own family. My salary was occasional praise, and my benefits were non-existent. I finished my coffee and stood up. Thank you. Rowan, where are you going? She asked. I have some work to do, I said. Not the work they think I am doing. I need to check my inventory. I walked back to my casita, the gravel crunching under my boots. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in violent shades of violet and orange. I went into my room and locked the door. It was a symbolic gesture, but it felt necessary. I sat at the small wooden desk and opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life, a blank white page staring back at me. I was done crying. Crying was for people who had hope that things would change. I had something better than hope. I had data. If my father had tried to use my card tonight, knowing I wasn't there, what else had he done when I wasn't looking? What other clerical errors had he made? What other papers had I signed in a rush because I wanted to be the good daughter? I opened a fresh document. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from the magnitude of the door I was about to open. I typed a single line at the top of the page. What do they have in my name? I hit enter, then I opened the National Credit Bureau website. I was not going to sleep tonight. I was going to perform an autopsy on my financial life, and I had a terrible feeling I was going to find rot in places I never even thought to look. The red dust of the Cathedral Rock Trail coated my hiking boots, turning the black leather into a soft, powdery rust color. My lungs burned in a way that felt clean. A sharp contrast to the suffocating tightness I usually felt in my chest whenever my father called. We were 3 miles up, a small group of 6 women moving through the high desert silence. "So let me get this straight," said Tess, a woman in her 50s with calves made of steel in a bakery back in Chicago. She paused to drink from her canteen. "You designed the invites, paid the deposit, fixed the photos, and they didn't even give you a plate of rubbery chicken." I laughed. It was a dry, raspy sound. It sounds worse when you say it out loud. But yes, I am basically the family IT department that also doubles as a bank. "And the emotional support animal," added a younger woman named Chloe. "Right," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "I am the support animal that pays for its own kibble. My dad acts like I should be grateful he lets me fix his printer. He calls it contributing to the legacy." Tess capped her water bottle with a decisive snap. She looked me dead in the eye, the kind of look that probably made her employees terrified to burn a croissant. "Honey, that is not a family," Tess said. "That is a subscription service, and you need to cancel it." The group erupted in laughter. It wasn't mean laughter. It was the kind of communal, recognition-filled sound you hear when someone finally names the elephant in the room. I stood there, leaning against a warm sandstone boulder, and felt a bubble of genuine mirth rise in my throat. I laughed until my sides hurt. I laughed until I was gasping for the thin desert air. It was the first time in years I wasn't laughing to smooth over tension or to make someone else feel comfortable. I was laughing because it was true. I was the Netflix of the Simmons family. I was a monthly fee they paid in guilt to get premium access to my labor. Later that afternoon, I sat in a linen armchair across from Dr. Marlowe. The wellness center smelled of eucalyptus and expensive silence. Dr. Marlowe was not the kind of therapist who nodded and asked how that made me feel. She was sharp, pragmatic, and looked like she could dismantle a person's defense mechanisms with a single sentence. "I feel guilty," I admitted, picking at a loose thread on my leggings. "My phone has been buzzing for 2 days. I feel like I have abandoned a child in a supermarket." "Doctor." Marlowe adjusted her glasses. "Your father is not a child. Gianna, he is a 50-year-old man who knows how to operate a credit card terminal. You are not experiencing abandonment guilt. You are experiencing withdrawal. Withdrawal. You are addicted to being needed," she said plainly. "It is your drug of choice. It validates your existence. If you fix the problem, you matter. If you pay the bill, you have value. Now that you have stepped away, you are going cold turkey. The anxiety you feel is not love. It is the panic of an addict realizing her supply is cut off. You are not disappearing. You are recovering from the long-term trauma of being used as a utility." I stared at her. The truth of it settled over me like a heavy blanket. I wasn't a bad daughter. I was just a depleted resource. For the rest of the day, I practiced the art of refusal. It started small. When the group coordinator asked if we all wanted to go to the vegan cafe for dinner, I said no. I wanted a burger. I went to a local diner alone, sat at the counter, and ordered a cheeseburger with extra pickles. I ate it slowly, savoring every bite, realizing I had spent my entire adult life eating where my father wanted, watching movies Wesley wanted, and vacationing where my aunts wanted. This burger was the most delicious thing I had ever tasted because I had chosen it. My phone was still vibrating in my bag. I pulled it out while I waited for the check. There were 12 new messages. My father. This is humiliating. People are asking questions. Wesley. Can you just unlock the drive? Please, I need the file. Aunt Linda. Your father is very upset. Call him. Yesterday. These messages would have triggered a panic attack. I would have felt the familiar clawing need to smooth things over, to apologize for existing inconveniently, but today, with Dr. Marlowe's voice in my head and Tessa's joke in my ear. I read them differently. They weren't cries for help. They were phishing attempts. They were trying to hack back into the system of Gianna Simmons to retrieve the resources they felt entitled to. I scrolled past them, my thumb hovering over the delete button. Then, a new message popped up from a number I didn't save, but recognized. It was Kendra, Wesley's girlfriend. My stomach tightened. I expected her to be angry, to blame me for ruining her big weekend debut. Hey Gianna, it is Kendra. I got your number from the group chat. I just wanted to say I am sorry. I stared at the screen. A second message bubbled up. I honestly didn't know you weren't invited. Wesley told me you hate these things and that you refused to come because you thought we were all too much. He made it sound like you looked down on us. I thought you just didn't like me. I had no idea you did all the work. The branding is beautiful. You deserve to be here. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. He made it sound like you looked down on us. That was the narrative. That was the hook they used to keep everyone else in line. To the outside world. I wasn't the victim. I was the snob. I was the difficult, arrogant sister who couldn't be bothered with family time. They had weaponized my competence to paint me as aloof, using my absence to build their own martyrdom. Kendra wasn't the enemy. She was just another person watching the movie my father was directing. I typed back, "Thank you, Kendra. That means a lot. Enjoy the party." I didn't owe her a long explanation. The truth was already doing the work for me. I walked back to my casita under the vast, starry sky. The desert night was cold, sharp, and clear. I went inside and opened my leather-bound journal. I had bought it at the airport gift shop, intending to write about my feelings and my journey to inner peace. Instead, I uncapped my pen and wrote a single sentence in the center of the page. I am not punishing them. I am choosing me. I looked at the words. They felt solid. But then, the investigative itch that had started at the coffee shop returned. Tessa's voice echoed in my head. That is a subscription service. If I was a subscription service, then there were records, there were logs, and if my father was willing to try to charge my card for $8,000 behind my back, what else had he authorized without my permission? I had spent years signing papers. He slid across the desk. Just standard forms. Gia. Just an insurance update. Gia. Just a co-signature for the office lease. Gia. I closed the journal. The emotional healing was good. The boundaries were necessary. But I needed to know the extent of the damage. I needed to know exactly how much of me they had consumed. I opened my laptop. I didn't go to a meditation site. I didn't go to email. I navigated to the official annual credit report website. I cracked my knuckles. The sound loud in the quiet room. It was time to stop feeling and start auditing. I typed in my social security number, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm of dread and determination. I was about to look under the hood of the Simmons family engine, and I had a terrible feeling I was going to find out that I'd been paying for the gas, the insurance, and the repairs on a car I wasn't even allowed to drive. The blue light of the laptop screen felt like an interrogation lamp in the dark hotel room. I had been staring at the credit report for 20 minutes, willing the line item to be a mistake, a glitch, a hallucination brought on by desert heat and emotional exhaustion. But the data was stubborn. There, nestled between my student loans and my car lease, was a revolving credit account with Regional Heritage Bank. It had been opened 2 years ago. The current balance was sitting at $14,000. The payment history showed minimum payments made sporadically, just enough to keep the wolves at bay, but never enough to touch the principal. I did not bank with Regional Heritage. I had never set foot in one of their branches. My eyes drifted to the billing address column. It was not my apartment in the city. It was 4402 Maple Drive, my father's house. I reached for my phone, my hands steady with a terrifying kind of calm. I dialed the 24-hour fraud hotline on the back of my own debit card, navigating the automated menu until I reached a human being. "Security verification," the voice on the other end said, bored and efficient. "Can you confirm the recovery email associated with the account ending in 558? I paused. "I do not have an account ending in 558. That is why I'm calling. I am looking at a credit report that shows an account I did not open." "I see," the agent said, the boredom vanishing. "I can see the account here. It was opened online on November 12th, 2 years ago. To verify your identity, I need to send a code to the phone number on file. It ends in 72. The air left my lungs. My phone number ended in 41. My father's old cell phone number, the one he used exclusively for business and private family matters, ended in 72. "That is not my number," I said, my voice flat. "That number belongs to a relative. Please do not send a code to that number." "Ma'am, if you cannot verify the recovery contact, I cannot give you full access. I am Gianna Simmons," I said, reciting my social security number, my mother's maiden name, and the amount of my last tax return. "I am telling you that this account was opened fraudulently using my credentials. I need you to freeze it immediately." The line went silent for a moment. "Okay, I have flagged it. I can email you a copy of the original digital application for your review." "Do it," while I waited for the email. I opened 3 new tabs on my browser: Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. I did what I should have done 5 years ago. I placed a total freeze on my credit. I set up 2-factor authentication on every single account I owned, linking them to an authenticator app that only I could access. I changed my email passwords to random strings of 20 characters. I was locking the doors. I was barring the windows. I was shutting down the Bank of Gianna. The email from the bank arrived with a soft ping. I opened the PDF attachment. It was a standard credit application. Name Gianna Simmons. Income my income. Employer my design firm. I scrolled to the bottom, the signature box. It was a digital scrawl, a shaky, looped cursive that looked nothing like my sharp, architectural signature. It looked like someone trying to copy my name from memory. It looked like the way my father signed birthday cards when he was in a rush. He had not just borrowed money. He had impersonated me. He had committed a felony because he knew I would never press charges. He banked on my silence the same way he banked on my labor. My phone buzzed. A message from Paige. "You need to see this. He just said this during the toast." It was a video clip. The quality was shaky, filmed from under a table. But the audio was clear. My father was standing on a makeshift stage, holding a microphone. He looked flushed, perhaps from the wine, perhaps from the stress of the declined card earlier. "We built this legacy together," he was saying, sweeping his arm across the room. "Family is about lifting each other up, even when we are apart. We are a team. My daughter Gianna could not be here tonight because she is working on a big project for us. But you know Gianna, she is always happy to help. She would give you the shirt off her back if it helped the family shine." I watched it twice. Always happy to help. He was not praising me. He was establishing a precedent. He was publicly validating the idea that my resources were community property. By saying I was happy to help, he was making any future objection from me look like a betrayal of my own nature. He was gaslighting a room of 200 people to cover his tracks. I closed the video. I did not feel the urge to scream. I felt the cold, hard click of a lock snapping shut. I was done arguing with feelings. You cannot explain hurt to people who only speak the language of leverage. My phone rang again. It was Wesley. I looked at the name. Usually, I would let it go to voicemail, terrified of the confrontation. But tonight, I was not afraid. I was armed with a PDF and a frozen credit file. I answered. "Hello, Wesley? Sis?" His voice was bright, breathless, and entirely too loud. It was his "I need a favor" voice, coated in a thick layer of artificial charm. "Hey, I am so glad I caught you. I know you are probably relaxings. But we have a tiny situation here." "I am not relaxings," I said. "I am reading a credit report." There was a pause, a beat of silence that lasted just a second too long. "Oh," he said, the brightness dimming slightly. "Right. Well, listen, Dad is really stressed about the whole card mix-up earlier. It was totally the bank's fault, obviously, but we need to smooth things over with the venue manager before tomorrow's brunch. Can we just talk? Like, figure this out? We miss you. Gia. Do not call me Gia." Okay, Gianna. Look, can we just talk? I can put Dad on the line. We just need to clear up the confusion." "There is no confusion," I said. "There is a $14,000 balance on a card I never signed for. That is not confusion. Wesley, that is fraud." "Whoa. Hold on," Wesley said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Don't use words like that. You know how Dad gets. He needed a bridge loan a while back and he figured you wouldn't mind because you are doing so well. He was going to pay it back. He just forgot to tell you. He forgot to tell me for 2 years. He is your father, Gianna. He raised you. And now he is stealing from me." "Please," Wesley pleaded, desperation leaking into his tone. "Just talk to us. We can fix this. We can work out a payment plan or something. Just unfreeze the card so we can pay the resort, and we will discuss the rest when you get back. Please, Kendra is looking at me like I'm a criminal. I cannot unfreeze the card. Wesley, I canceled it." "You what?" "I canceled the card, and I locked my credit." "You are ruining the weekend," he hissed, the nice guy mask slipping off entirely. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Dad is going to lose his mind." "I do not care about his mind. I care about my credit score. Gianna, be reasonable. Just talk to him." "No," I said. "I am done talking. If you have something to say, send it to me." "What?" "Email me," I said, my voice sounding like steel. "If you want to discuss finances, debt, or bridge loans, put it in an email. I want everything in writing. I want paper trails. Wesley, no more phone calls. No more just between us. If it is not in writing, it does not exist. You are being paranoid. I am being a professional. Goodbye. Wesley." I hung up before he could respond. I sat there, my heart rate surprisingly slow. I had done it. I had demanded the one thing they feared more than poverty accountability. 5 minutes later, my email inbox pinged. I expected a long, rambling apology. I expected a guilt trip about how I was breaking the family apart. I expected a plea for mercy. I opened the message from Wesley. Subject, moving forward. Attached was a single PDF file titled Simmons_family_consolidation_agreement_draft.pdf. I clicked it open. It was not an apology. It was a contract. I scanned the legalese. It was a crudely drafted document, likely pulled from a template online. But the intent was clear. It outlined a restructuring of family assets. It proposed that all outstanding debts incurred for family maintenance, including the fraudulent credit card and the reunion costs, be consolidated into a single loan. And the borrower listed on the signature line Gianna Simmons. They did not want to pay me back. They wanted me to retroactively accept the debt. They wanted me to sign a document that would legally bind me to their financial mess. Framing it as a family investment, they were trying to trick me into laundering their theft into a legitimate loan. I stared at the screen, and the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. This was why they were frantic. This was why they needed to talk. They needed my signature to make the crime go away. They needed me to become an accomplice in my own exploitation. I did not delete the email. I hit Save As. I saved it to a new folder on my hard drive. I named the folder Evidence. If they wanted a war, they had just handed me the ammunition. I flew back to Savannah on a Tuesday morning, but I did not go home. I did not drive to the house where I grew up, and I certainly did not go to my father's estate. Instead, I checked into a generic business hotel downtown, the kind with stiff sheets and abstract art in the lobby. I needed neutral ground. I needed a space that did not smell like my childhood obedience. I spent the afternoon organizing my case. I went to a print shop and printed everything: the credit report, the fraudulent application, the declined transaction log, the email from Wesley with the consolidation agreement. I put them all into a black leather portfolio, arranging them chronologically. It felt less like preparing for a family meeting and more like preparing for a deposition. I texted them a time and a location: a coffee shop on State Street, public, busy, well lit. When I walked in, they were already there. My father, Randall, sat with his back to the wall, watching the door like a cornered animal. Wesley sat next to him, looking pale and unshaven, picking at the label of a water bottle. They looked like two men who had spent the weekend trying to bail water out of a sinking ship. I sat down opposite them. I did not order coffee. I placed the black folder on the table between us. "You look tired," my father said. It was not a concern. It was an opening jab. He wanted to establish that I was the one who was worn out, the one who was breaking. "I am fine," I said, my voice steady. "Thank you for coming." "This is ridiculous, Gianna," my father scoffed, leaning back and crossing his arms. "You are making a federal case out of a family misunderstanding. You are overreacting." "No," I said, placing my hand on the folder. "I am documenting." I opened the folder. The first page was the invoice for the reunion services, the ones I had paid for. The second page was the invite list without my name. "We are not here to talk about my feelings," I continued. "We are here to talk about the $14,000 charged to a credit card account opened in my name, without my consent, using a digital signature that does not match mine." The air at the table grew heavy. Wesley flinched. "It was a stressful time," Wesley blurted out, his voice high and thin. "You have to understand, Gianna. The business was tight. Dad was waiting on a payout from the Henderson deal. We didn't want to worry you. It was just a bridge loan." "A bridge loan is something you apply for," I said. "Identity theft is when you use someone else's social security number." "It was a misunderstanding," Wesley insisted, looking around to see if anyone was listening. "We were going to pay it off before you even noticed, but then the venue costs for the reunion blew up, and Kendra's parents were putting all this pressure on us to make the event look high class. We just got in over our heads." "So you stole from me to impress your girlfriend's parents," I summarized. "We did not steal," my father snapped. "We leveraged family assets. There is a difference." "I am not a family asset," I said. "I am a person." I slid the credit report across the table. It landed in front of my father. He did not look at it. "Who opened the account?" I asked. The question hung there. "Who sat at the computer?" I asked again, enunciating every word, typed in my social security number, and signed my name. "Was it you, Dad? Or did you make Wesley do it?" Silence. My father looked out the window. Wesley stared at the table. Neither of them would meet my eyes. Their silence was louder than a confession. It confirmed everything. My father was the architect, and Wesley was likely the instrument, or perhaps they had done it together, justifying it over a scotch, telling themselves they were doing it for the greater good of the Simmons name. "It does not matter who clicked the button," my father muttered finally. "What matters is that you abandoned us this weekend. You left us high and dry. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it was to explain your absence to Mr. Henderson? To have the credit card declined in front of the staff?" He was pivoting. He was trying to make his shame my fault. "You embarrassed the family," he hissed, leaning forward. You ran away like a coward." "I did not embarrass you," I said coldly. "The truth embarrassed you. The truth is that you threw a party you could not afford, hosted it on my dime, and then excluded me from it. All I did was stop paying for the privilege of being insulted." "You are ungrateful," my father spat. "After everything I have done for you." "What have you done for me?" I asked. "Besides use my credit score." I opened the folder to the final page. I had drafted a list of terms. It was not a legal document yet, but it would be. "Here is what is going to happen," I said. 1. You will repay the $14,000 plus interest within 60 days. 2. You will remove my name from every single family account, utility bill, and lease agreement by the end of the month. 3. Any future design work I do for the family business will be under a contract with a 50% deposit up front. And 4. If you use my designs, my name goes on them. If you want the credit, you do the work." My father laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "And if I say no, you are going to sue your own father." "I am going to report the fraud," I said. "I have the police report filled out. I just have not filed it yet." His face went white. He realized, finally, that I was not bluffing. "You wouldn't," Wesley whispered. "Gianna, that would destroy Dad's reputation." "Then you better start finding the money," I said. Suddenly, a shadow fell over the table. I looked up. Standing there, holding a takeout cup of tea, was Kendra. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a trench coat. She looked like she had been crying, or perhaps she just hadn't slept. She wasn't supposed to be here. I hadn't invited her, but looking at Wesley's terrified expression, I realized he must have told her he was meeting me, maybe hoping she would come and soften me up, or maybe she had followed him. "Kendra," Wesley squeaked. "Babe, what are you doing here?" Kendra ignored him. She looked at the papers spread out on the table. She saw the credit report. She saw the identity theft affidavit I had printed out, but kept face down until now. She looked at my father. "So it is true," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the noise of the coffee shop like a knife. "Kendra, honey, this is a private family matter," my father said, putting on his charming smile. It looked ghastly on his tired face. "Gianna is just having a bit of an episode." "You told me she wasn't invited because she was busy," Kendra said, "but you tried to charge her card for the catering." "It was a mistake," Wesley tried to interject. "A banking error." "And this," Kendra pointed to the credit report. $14,000. 2 years ago, was that a banking error too? Wesley opened his mouth, but no words came out. Kendra turned to me. "Did you know about this account, Gianna?" "I found out 3 days ago," I said. Kendra nodded slowly. She looked at Wesley, and the expression on her face was one of absolute, crushing disappointment. It was the look of a woman realizing that the man she loved was just a boy hiding behind his father's lies. "So you didn't invite her," Kendra said, her voice trembling slightly. "But you tried to make her pay for the party, and you have been using her name to fund your lifestyle for 2 years. "It is complicated," my father shouted, slamming his hand down on the table. The sudden noise made the other patrons jump. "You do not understand how business works. Kendra, we did what we had to do to survive. Family protects family." He was losing control. The mask of the benevolent patriarch was slipping, revealing the desperate, angry man beneath. Kendra took a step back. She looked at my father's red face. She looked at Wesley, who was shrinking into his chair, unable to even meet her gaze. "Family protects family," she repeated. "Is that what you call this?" She looked at me. There was a moment of shared understanding, a silent apology and a silent acceptance. Then she turned back to Wesley. "I thought I was marrying into a legacy," Kendra said softly. "But I think I was just going to be the next credit card." "Kendra, wait," Wesley pleaded, reaching for her hand. She pulled away sharply. "If this is who you are," she said, her voice shaking with finality, "I am rethinking everything." She turned and walked out of the coffee shop. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully, a stark contrast to the silence she left behind. My father sat frozen, his hands still on the table. Wesley put his head in his hands. I closed my folder. The sound of the snap was final. I had not just won the argument, I had dismantled the illusion. The ringing of my phone in the quiet hotel room made me jump. But it was not the jagged, demanding ringtone assigned to my father or Wesley. It was a standard, default chime. I looked at the screen. Grandma Jo, Marjorie Jo Simmons, was the matriarch of the family, a woman who spent most of her time in her sunroom tending to her orchids. Seemingly oblivious to the power struggles her son Randall waged in the living room, she was 82 years old and rarely made phone calls. I answered, my voice softening instinctively. "Hello, Grandma?" "Gianna," she said. Her voice was not the frail, airy whisper I was used to hearing at holiday dinners. It was clear, low, and stripped of pleasantries. "Come to my house, now. Do not tell your father." I arrived at her small cottage 20 minutes later. It was located on the edge of the family estate, a relic from a time before my father built the sprawling, gaudy mansion that currently housed his ego. The air inside smelled of lavender and old dust. Grandma Jo was sitting in her high-backed wing chair, a cup of tea steaming on the side table. On her lap sat a metal lockbox, the paint chipped at the corners, revealing the dull gray steel underneath. "Sit down," she commanded. I sat on the ottoman opposite her. "You caused quite a stir," she said, her eyes sharp behind her wire-rimmed glasses. "Your father is pacing the floors like a caged tiger. He is telling anyone who will listen that you are having a mental breakdown." "I am not having a breakdown," I said. "I am having a breakthrough." "I know," she said. She tapped her fingers on the metal box. "I have been watching you for years, Gianna, watching you fix everything, watching you pay for everything, watching you apologize for things you did not do. I stayed quiet because I thought you would eventually see it for yourself. But when I heard about the credit card, well, silence becomes complicit at some point." She unlocked the box with a small brass key she pulled from her cardigan pocket. She lifted the lid and withdrew a stack of papers bound in a faded blue ribbon. "Your mother gave me these before she passed," Jo said. "She made me promise to keep them safe." She said, "Jo, keep these because I know one day they will try to rewrite Gianna out of the story." My breath caught in my throat. My mother had died when I was 20, and my father had always told me she left everything to him to manage for the good of the family. Jo handed me the stack. I untied the ribbon. The top document was a copy of a trust deed. "Your mother did not leave everything to Randall," Jo said quietly. "She left a specific investment fund in your name. It was not millions, but it was enough. Enough to start a business without debt. Enough to buy a house. Enough to say no to your father." I scanned the document. The date was 15 years ago. The beneficiary was Gianna Simmons. "He never told me," I whispered. "He told me there was no money. He told me the medical bills took everything." "He lied," Jo said. "He absorbed the fund into the family operating costs. He forged the transfer documents. He knew that if you had your own money, you would have your own voice, and Randall cannot survive if the people around him have voices." I flipped through the other papers. There were letters from my mother detailing her worries about Randall's spending. There were receipts for jewelry my father claimed was family heirlooms, but had actually been bought with my mother's savings. It was a paper trail of financial cannibalism. "And the reunion," Jo continued, leaning forward. "Do you know why he was so desperate for you to be there? Do you know why he is chasing you so hard now?" "Because he needs me to pay the bills," I said. "No," Jo said, "because he needs you to sign the consolidation." I froze. "I saw the draft. Wesley emailed it to me." "That was not a draft they came up with last night," Jo said. "That has been the plan for 6 months. The reunion was never just a party. It was a stage. The plan was to wine and dine the extended family. Get everyone sentimental, and then present the Simmons family consolidation agreement as a way to secure the future. He was going to pressure you to sign it in front of everyone. He was going to use the pressure of the audience to make you sign away your rights to your mother's stolen fund and assume the debts of the estate. My blood ran cold. The exclusion from the guest list made sense now. It wasn't just pettiness, it was a tactical error. They wanted me there to trap me, but in their arrogance, they forgot to invite the victim to the execution. He overplayed his hand, Joe said with a dry chuckle. He thought he could erase you and use you at the same time. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Paige. I glanced at it. The family chat is blowing up. Aunt Linda just asked why the host didn't know how to run the projector. Uncle Ben asked why your name wasn't on the program if you did the work. Dad is trying to spin it, but nobody is buying it. The silence is getting loud. Gianna. They are realizing the perfect family is just a show. I looked up at Grandma Joe. They are asking questions. Good, Joe said. Randall's reputation is built on the appearance of control. When you didn't show up, you stripped him of that control. You didn't just ruin a party, you exposed the wizard behind the curtain. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Wesley. Please call me. Kendra is packing a bag. She says she won't set a date for the wedding until I fix this with my sister properly. She is serious. Gianna, she is talking about taking a break. I felt a surge of grim satisfaction. Kendra was the prize. She was the connection to old money and status that my father and Wesley were desperate to secure. If they lost Kendra, they lost their future social standing. Wesley is panicking, I told Joe. Kendra gave him an ultimatum. Good for her, Joe said, sipping her tea. She has a spine, unlike my grandson. Then, the final vibration. A text from my father. I opened the message. Gianna, let us put this behind us. We are family. I am willing to forgive your outburst if you come home and we sit down like adults. He kept saying we needed to heal. Also, I need you to look at that agreement Wesley sent. It is just a formality to protect the assets. We can discuss the credit card thing later. Love, Dad. I read it out loud to Joe. Willing to forgive my outburst, I repeated, tasting the bile in the words. And he still wants the signature. He thinks you are still the girl who wants to be good, Joe said. He thinks he can charm you back into the cage. I looked at the documents in my lap. I looked at the trust deed that proved my father had stolen my independence before I even had a chance to use it. I looked at the fraudulent credit application I had printed out earlier. He is wrong, I said. What are you going to do? Joe asked. I stood up, clutching the metal box. I am going to finish what he started. He wanted a reunion. He wanted a gathering of the family to discuss our legacy. I think that is a wonderful idea. You are going to the meeting, Joe said, a small smile playing on her lips. No, I said. I am calling the meeting, and this time, I am setting the agenda. I looked at the text from my father again. We need to heal. He thinks this is about an apology, I said. He thinks if he says sorry effectively enough, I will unlock the credit card and sign the loan. He does not understand, Joe said. No, I agree. He thinks he is negotiating a truce. He does not realize he is negotiating the terms of his surrender. I put the documents back in the box and locked it. The click was loud in the small room. Thank you, Grandma. Don't thank me, she said, picking up her book. Just make sure when you burn it down, you don't stand in the ashes. I walked out of the cottage and into the bright Savannah sunlight. I had the receipts. I had the truth about my mother. I had the leverage of Kendra's departure. And I had the absolute, terrifying clarity that comes when you realize the people who were supposed to protect you were actually the ones hunting you. I typed a reply to my father. I agree. We need to meet, but not at the house. We will meet at the community hall, Tuesday night. Invite the family, all of them. If we are going to discuss the legacy, let us do it with witnesses. I hit send. The final battle was not going to be a quiet conversation in a dark office. It was going to be a public reckoning, and this time, I was not going to be the one leaving the room in tears. The fluorescent lights of the Cedar Creek Community Hall hummed with a low, irritating buzz that seemed to amplify the tension in the room. This was not the Hilton Harbor Resort. There were no ocean views here, no crystal glasses, and no jazz band. There were only metal folding chairs arranged in a semicircle, occupied by 20 of my closest relatives. My aunts, uncles, and cousins sat with their hands folded in their laps, looking like a jury waiting for opening statements. My father stood at the front of the room. He was wearing his best suit, the navy one he usually reserved for board meetings and funerals. He cleared his throat, flashing the charming, weary smile that had let him get away with murder for 30 years. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice smooth. "I know emotions have been high this week. There have been misunderstandings, hurt feelings, but we are Simmons. We do not let petty grievances break our bond. Gianna and I have had a rough patch, but tonight is about moving forward, so let us put the past behind us and focus on healing." He gestured for me to come up and stand beside him, a visual prop for his redemption arc. I stood up from my chair in the back row, but I did not walk to his side. I walked to the podium on the left, where I had set up my laptop and a portable projector. "We can move on," I said, my voice calm, amplified slightly by the microphone. "But only after we have accountability." My father's smile faltered. "Gianna, this is not the time for—" "It is exactly the time," I interrupted. "You wanted a family meeting. You wanted to discuss the legacy, so let us discuss it." I pressed a key on my laptop. The projector screen behind my father lit up. "Point 1, I said. "The reunion." I did not rehash the sob story. I simply showed the receipts. On the screen appeared a side-by-side comparison. On the left was the invoice for 100 hours of design labor, valued at $15,000, marked pro bono. On the right was the guest list, with the empty row where my name should have been. "I worked for 3 months to build your image," I said to the room, "and when the work was done, I was discarded because my presence was inconvenient." A murmur went through the room. Aunt Linda shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Point 2, I continued, clicking to the next slide. "The financial abuse." I pulled up the credit report. The gasps were audible this time. I walked them through the timeline the account opened 2 years ago. The address listed as my father's house, the digital signature that was a clumsy forgery of my own name. $14,000, I stated clearly. Debt accrued in my name, without my knowledge, to fund a lifestyle this family could not afford. "That was a mistake," Wesley shouted from the front row. He stood up, his face red. "It was a clerical error. We were going to fix it." "Sit down, Wesley," I said. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I clicked to the final slide. This was the smoking gun. It was a timeline of 2 emails. The first email, time-stamped at 2 p.m. on Friday, was the text from my father, guest list tight, "Do not come." The second email, time-stamped at 2:10 p.m. on the same day, was the failed authorization attempt on my credit card for $8,000. "Look at the timestamps," I told the room. 10 minutes. 10 minutes after they told me I was not welcome at the party, they tried to charge me for the food they were about to eat. They did not forget me. They banked on me. They believed I was so desperate for their approval that I would pay for my own exclusion. The silence in the hall was absolute. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a truth so ugly that no one knew where to look. Wesley stood up again, trembling. He looked at his father, then at me. "It was me," he yelled. "I opened the account. Dad didn't know I stole the identity. Punish me. Gianna, leave Dad out of it." He was doing it again. He was throwing himself on the grenade to save the general. I looked at my brother with pity. "Stop it, Wesley. You do not get to protect him with my pain anymore. We both know you have never filled out a form correctly in your life. You did not do this alone." "Enough." My father slammed his hand on the table. The charm was gone. The politician was gone. In his place was a cornered, angry man. "You are ungrateful," he shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. "I did what I had to do. I kept this family afloat. I kept the business running, and yes, I used your name, because you could handle it. You always handle it. Gianna, you are the strong one. You fix things. That is what you do. You fix what I break." The confession hung in the air like smoke. You fix what I break. He didn't see me as a daughter. He saw me as a repair kit. "I am not a tool," I said softly. "I am a person." I looked at Kendra. She was sitting in the second row, her face pale. She stood up slowly. She looked at Wesley, who was still standing there, looking like a child caught in a lie. "I was going to marry into this," Kendra said, her voice shaking but clear. "I defended you to my parents. I told them the Simmons family had honor." She took off the engagement ring. It was a modest diamond, one that I knew Wesley had bought with a bonus check I had helped him negotiate. She placed it on the metal chair next to her. "I cannot do this," she said. "Not like this." She turned and walked out of the hall. The sound of her heels clicking on the linoleum was the only sound in the room. Wesley collapsed back into his chair, burying his face in his hands. My father looked around the room. He saw his sister looking at the floor. He saw his cousins whispering. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He realized he had lost the audience. "Gianna," he said, his voice cracking, "we can fix this. Just sign the consolidation. We will pay you back. I promise." "No," I said. I closed my laptop. The screen went dark. "I am not suing you," I said. "Not today. Because a lawsuit would drag this out, and I am done giving you my time." I walked over to him and placed a single sheet of paper on the table. "This is a cease and desist," I said. "It is also a notification of severance. I have closed every account you had access to. I have fraud alerts on my credit file. If you try to open so much as a library card in my name, the police will be at your door in 10 minutes. "You are cutting me off," he whispered. "I am your father, and I am your daughter," I said. "Not your bank, not your crisis manager. If you want a relationship with me, we start from zero, no money, no favors, no business. We learn to be father and daughter, or we be nothing." He stared at the paper. "One last thing," I said, turning to address the room. "I have accepted a position as the senior art director for Archer & Co." A gasp went through the room. Archer & Co. was a major design firm 3 states away. It was a career-defining role. "I move next month," I said. "I am not leaving to run away. I am leaving to live. I have spent my entire life building a legacy for the Simmons name, hoping it would eventually include me. I realize now that I have to build my own." I picked up my bag. I felt lighter than I had in years. The heavy backpack of guilt, of obligation, of the desperate need to be good, was gone. I walked past my father. He looked small. He looked old. He looked like a man who had sold his most valuable asset for a quick payout and was now realizing the cost. "If you want me in your life," I said to him, quiet enough that only he could hear, "you do not get me as your tool anymore." I walked out of the community hall and into the cool night air. I did not look back. I did not check my phone. I got into my car, turned on the engine, and drove toward the highway. The rearview mirror was empty. The road ahead was wide open. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please comment below and tell me where you are listening from. I would love to connect with you all. Don't forget to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like the video, and tap the notification bell so this story can reach more people who need to hear it.